Hello and welcome back to Rebekah. We are going to talk through my pile of possibilities, maybe more of a mountain at this point, of options for the LOVEMBER readathon coming up. Now, it's running from the 17th to the 30th of November, so it's just a week away. So I'm very excited and I have really amassed a lot of books. In fact, I am really surprised that I was not tackled on the way out of the library because I think I cleaned off their shelves. So I have a huge pile of print books. I'll try to go through what prompts they fit for. I'm sure I'm going to forget a book or forget a prompt, and I obviously haven't read these, so I'm not sure whether they do or don't fully fit some of the prompts, but the prompts are very loosey-goosey and interpret loosely as you will, for sure. So if anything sounds like it fits, it's probably appropriate. So we're going to start with the ebooks though, rather than the pile of print books that I have, because I do still want to read from my own owned books as well. So going through these very briefly, because I have a long list, the first novella that I want to get to is Fall Into You by Georgina Kiersten. And this is a female-female romance. So our main character here is running away from a bad reputation, kind of. And so I think that she is moving to a new place because she left a man at the altar. And she runs into an old friend who she kind of maybe has some feelings for in this new small town that she has moved to. So I think it's going to be small town friends to lovers kind of situation. And it just seems like it has very good cozy vibes to it. Low drama, I think, and it's quite short. So I'm wondering how that's going to be executed. So this one obviously is a contemporary with a lovely red cover. So I think that counts for those two prompts. The next novella that I have is Mistlefoe by Kimberly Lemming. This is a short in-between story in the Mead Mishaps series. So I read the first one earlier this year and really enjoyed it. It was hilarious. This is following the daughter of a blacksmith who was cursed by a demon for kind of doing something he wasn't really supposed to do. And that curse is hilarious. Basically, the weapons he creates kind of taunt him and say dirty things all the time. And so he can't sell them. So she has to go and make a bargain with the demon. And I'm assuming this is going to be a very spicy bargain. So this definitely is a fantasy. It has enemies to lovers elements, I would say, for sure. She's not supposed to be friends with the demon. So those two prompts definitely count here. You could maybe say forced proximity on this because obviously she's had to go and make a deal to work with this demon in some way. Yeah, so I think it's gonna be great fun. I'm super excited to get back into this series. So the next one I have an audiobook hold on. So it doesn't look like it's going to come in if projected timelines are correct, but it could absolutely come in more quickly. We always have that surprise Libby hold that comes in. So if so, that's at the top of my list, and it is The Stand-Up Groomsman by Jackie Lau. And this one is following so this is the second book in a series, and you could absolutely read it, I'm sure, without having read the first, but it's following the best friends of the original couple from the first book, and they're trying to make the original couple's wedding go smoothly. But they do not get along so well because the main characters here are a professional woman who she works very hard at her career, but on the side she also does art, and she is a massive fan of this guy who is an actor and comedian who is the other guy's best friend. And so she and he got off on the wrong foot because he was judgmental of the fact that she chooses not to pursue art, her passion, as a career and turn it into something she's profiting off of. And he has, done that himself, where he decided to absolutely abandon everything in his life to become a comedian and really pursue his passion. And so he just doesn't understand. And so that definitely has, to our prompts, an enemies to lovers, hate to love type element because they really got off on the wrong foot. So I'm very interested to see that. So I think this one is going to be a contemporary. It's got a celebrity main character because he's a professional actor and stand-up comedian, and it's got hate to love. You could probably also say forced proximity because they're stuck together planning this wedding and trying to make it go smoothly. So then another option on ebook I have is Claim the Dragon by A.C. Arthur. Now this is going to be a shifter romance. So we're following this half man, half dragon shifter who I think is kind of responsible for law and order and protecting the items that are owned by these dragon shifters. And unfortunately for him, he encounters a sexy lady thief who is there to steal some ancient dagger that they have. And so he's responsible for justice and putting her to death for her crimes, but of course he doesn't really want to do that because he has fallen for her. And so I'm very interested to see how that will unravel. For prompts, that very obviously is enemies to lovers. We have a criminal character, this lady thief. This is, I think, contemporary fantasy. There's a skyline here that has like buildings on it, high-rise buildings. And then he, of course, has tattoos. So lots of prompts that one's great for. The next one is another second in series that I'm sure you can read on its own, no problem. And that is Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is obviously a historical about two ladies falling in love. And we're following the Wild Winchesters family in this series, and they're all kind of these adopted kids, a found family who have been trained to be con artists. So our character from the Winchester family here is a young woman who is a master of disguise. So she likes to dress up as other characters, and she frequently dresses as men. And so in this case, she is involved in a situation with this other woman who has a manuscript that needs to be decoded. And she shows up in the guise of a baron. But much to the other woman's delight, she realizes it's not actually a baron very quickly, and then I guess sparks fly. So I think this will have forced proximity because they are kind of decoding this manuscript and kind of having to work together to do that. This is obviously a historical, and it has maybe a criminal, I think you could say, because she is from this con artist family. So I think it counts for all of those prompts. So I really enjoyed the first book, and I'm very excited to get to this one. And that is it for my ebooks. Now into the massive pile of print books that I have. So from the print pile, we have If the Boot Fits by Rebekah Weatherspoon. I really enjoyed the first book in this series. This one I've wanted to get to ever since I've heard of it because the premise is so genius. We have our main character here is an actor who has just won an Oscar. And so he is out at the Oscar party and he sets down his goodie bag with his Oscar in it. And someone's celebrity personal assistant absconds with his Oscar. And so he has to hunt down this person who stole his Oscar, and they make a love connection, and then he runs into her again and realizes maybe there's something more. And so I think this is going to be really great fun in terms of having that celebrity element. The previous book also kind of had a tie into that, but it wasn't as major of an element. So for prompts, this definitely is contemporary. It has celebrity, and it has, I think you could count her stealing his Oscar accidentally as a criminal element. Yeah, so that's If the Boot Fits. Then we have The Care and Feeding of Waspish Widows by Olivia Waite. So this is obviously a historical sapphic romance. I've read another book from this series, The Hellion's Waltz, and really enjoyed it. They're always a little bit playful, I think, and I like that in my historicals. So in this one, we have a woman who's dealing with a bee problem. So that's what the reference in the title is. She runs a print manufacturing business, I believe, and her warehouse is overrun with a colony of bees, and so she has to seek the help of a lovely beekeeper lady who has to come help her drive out the bees, and of course they have a love connection. So I think this one's going to be delightful. It's a little bit bigger than I was expecting. It's kind of chunky comparatively to the others in this series, but yeah, it's going to be delightful. So this is a historical. I think it's got forced proximity because obviously they're stuck working to get this bee mess cleaned up. So I think that's going to be a great one. And we have a total random pickup from the library, is How to Love Your Elf by Kerrelyn Sparks. I picked it up purely on the title, pretty much. So this one is about a princess, I'm assuming she's totally human, who is going to parley with the kingdom of the elves because they are currently at odds. And When she shows up, she's taken captive. But a kindly wood elf sees what happens and decides to help her, as far as I can tell. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun and maybe a little silly. This is clearly fantasy. It has forced proximity because she's trying to escape and has to seek the help of this wood elf. I think probably enemies to lovers counts for this one as well, at least in the proper sense. Even if they do hit it off right away, they're technically the human elf element makes them enemies. So I think this one's going to be a really fun one. And I saw another book there, if I do end up liking this, in this series that has an equally punny title. So I'm really curious to see how that one goes. And then I have a very popular release that I've wanted to get to since it came out. And now there's like 4 books out, I think maybe 5. And that is The Wedding Date by Jasmine Guillory. She took the romance world by storm with this first book. So this one is going to be really fun, I think, because this is all about 2 people who are strangers who get trapped in an elevator together and as a result wind up agreeing to go to a wedding, a fake date, together, and end up, of course, hitting it off. And I've heard there are some much deeper themes in terms of talking about race in this as well. So I'm really interested to read this one. This one has been very high on my list, but I just keep not getting to it. So this one is a contemporary. It's obviously got red on the cover, and I think this got forced proximity because they're trapped in an elevator. So yeah, this one is a great hit for a lot of prompts. Next up, we have Battle Royal by Lucy Parker. I have read Lucy Parker's Act Like It, the first book in the London Celebrities series, and I really enjoyed it. She does hate to love really well, and kind of a good slow burn, so I'm hoping that's what this is. So in this, we have a character who was a contestant on a competition cooking show, and the guy is the judge who kicked her off. So they are definitely enemies to lovers here. So yeah, I'm very hopeful that that's going to work out well for me. And so they now are in competition, it sounds like, for the role of royal baker for a wedding coming up that the princess is having. And so I think that's going to be a really fun premise. I love baking romances. Yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun one. So this is a contemporary. Obviously, it is hate to love and forced proximity. You could probably count this as red, but I think it's probably a dark pink. But yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun one. And then I have a rock star romance, Deep by Kylie Scott. So this one is not my sort of usual thing because it has a surprise pregnancy, or it starts with a surprise pregnancy, I think. So it sounds like the bassist here hooks up with his bandmate's little sister when they're in Vegas, and she winds up pregnant at the beginning. So this is all about them getting kind of forced together into a relationship they never planned to have, trying to decide how to deal with that, and them slowly falling in love. So hopefully that's what this is. Obviously this is a contemporary. This has both a tattoo and an instrument on the cover for our prompts. I think this counts as forced proximity. I would say a baby forces you into proximity. And so I think that's going to be an interesting read for me because I don't read a lot of stuff like this. Next I have Anne of Manhattan by Brina Starler. And this one is, I think this is kind of Anne of Green Gables fan fiction is really what it is, or very, very similar. So it obviously moves her setting to Manhattan. Anne and Gilbert are in grad school there, and they kind of get thrown into the same like thesis professor, I guess. And so they're in close proximity and everything, and wind up rekindling some previous passions. And I believe this is a very steamy book. So as I said, it's kind of a fan fiction, feeling out that romance, the spicy romance that a lot of people didn't get out of the original Anne books. Yeah, so I don't know what to think of this, but I'm very interested. And obviously there's red on the cover. This seems to be a contemporary setting, and there's definitely forced proximity there because they are stuck working with this same professor and become close because of that. So I'm very curious. On the next one, I'm calling out BookTube because I have heard no one talk about this, and I am so excited for it. This is Digging Up Love by Chandra Blumberg. Guys, it's a paleontologist and a baker. Come on. Yeah, so I mean, that's the premise here. Basically, we have a baker who apparently works for her grandparents' shop, restaurant, something like that. And they find a dinosaur bone in her grandparents' backyard. So, of course, hottie paleontologist shows up and has to work at their house for a while. And, of course, they fell for each other. So, yeah, I don't need to know any more than that. I am so obsessed. This had better be good. I'm gonna be heartbroken if this is not great. So it is going to count for red cover, obviously forced proximity because they're stuck at the house together, and this is gonna be a contemporary, I'm sure. Next we have a bookish romance, and that is The Roughest Draft by Siegemund-Broka. So this is a duo, a writing duo, who previously wrote a best-selling novel, and now they fell out. It's been years past. They haven't spoken to each other, but they're being forced back together to write another book. And so they go off to this secluded small town to isolate and write. And that forces them to start talking again. So sounds fun and bookish. I think everybody on BookTube always is on the hunt for more bookish books. So this one definitely has hate to love, and it's a contemporary, and it's got forced proximity, so it's gonna be a good time. Then we have a fun, ridiculous one with It's Hard Out Here for a Duke by Maya Rodale. So our titular Duke here with his chest bared is coming from America to London to take up his dukedom, and he decides to have one more night of freedom and take up a one-night stand with a woman he'll never see again. But inevitably, he of course will see her again because she is the companion to the Duchess who is at the house where he's going. And so they wind up stuck in this manor house, and not only that, but she is responsible for helping him learn his ducally role. So it's gonna be fun, I think, and ridiculous. I love this sort of playful historical, and there's definitely red on the cover, so that counts as a prompt. It's a historical, and there's obviously forced proximity because they're stuck in this house after, you know, they've had their no holds barred one night together. They're going to have to face that for as long as they're living in this manor together. Next, I have read from G.A. Aiken, who writes fantasy, but she also writes ridiculous shifter romances. So this one I couldn't not pick up. This is Hot and Badgered by Shelley Lauren, her alter ego who writes shifter romances. Now, this guy on the cover is in fact a grizzly shifter. So he happens to have a strange woman flops onto his hotel balcony naked, and he has to help her out. So he does that. But as she's leaving the scene, he realizes she's a badger shifter. A badger shifter. Yes. Yeah, so that's ridiculous. This whole series is all about badger shifters. And honey badgers are, of course, large and angry, so she's got a fiery temper, I think. I think it's going to be full of personality, and having read her work as G.A. Aiken, it definitely has a great, like, playful banter tone to it, so I'm hoping for more of that here. Yeah, this is, I think, contemporary and fantasy. I don't think this fits for any other prompts, though. There's not too much detail on the actual plot other than the dynamic between the two, so I'll be curious to see if it does fit for any other prompts, but I couldn't leave this on the shelf, basically. Then, wrapping up, I have a duo of Alexis Hall. I've read a self-pub from Alexis Hall previously and really enjoyed, but I haven't read either of these very popular releases traditionally published. So first we've got Boyfriend Material, and this is following the disgraced son of rock stars, who I think he has something like a sex tape, get out. And so he has to rehab his image by dating a really straight-laced guy. So we've got a really boring vegetarian barrister, that's how he's described. And so then they're fake dating to rehab his image, course turns into real dating. So this one is a contemporary. It's got red on the cover, and I think it very obviously has forced proximity because they're having to uphold this fake dating facade. We also have, I think they both would count as celebrities since this is all about publicity, but specifically our rock star kid here, definitely a celebrity character. And then the final one is A Lady for a Duke, also by Alexis Hall. So this is an interesting one because we have a trans woman character in a historical here. So that obviously does not come up very often. And here we have this soldier who was presumed dead at Waterloo, and so she decided to kind of start her life and living openly as a woman. And the reality of that is she leaves a lot of people behind, including her best friend. And she comes into a chance encounter with this best friend and discovers that he has never really gotten over the grief of losing his best friend. And so she starts to kind of come in contact with him more and helps him get over the grief. And I presume at some point she's going to make him realize that she is the best friend that he lost. Yeah, so I'm very interested in this one. This one has had a lot of rave reviews around BookTube. It is going to count for historical, obviously, and I think forced proximity. So that is my pile. I don't think you can even tell how many books there are here. This is even after I literally had to sit down at a table at the library and sift through to decide books I was going to actually take and which ones I was going to leave. I left a whole other pile behind, guys. So that's how excited I am for Lovember. I hope you're as excited as I am. Please help me whittle down this list. Tell me down below which ones you've read and which ones I should pick up first. I think obviously the Baker Paleontologist one is like #1 on my list, and then the couple I own. I have even more ebooks also on the list that I might get to, but they're much lower priority. So that's it for me on my Lovember mountain of possibilities. Thanks so much for watching.